大家好，欢迎做客遇见 EASD 每日精粹直播间。本场访谈，我们荣幸地邀请到了 EASD 的主席 Chantal Mathieu 教授。Dear Professor Mathieu, warm welcome.
Thank you.
Professor, the EASD annual meeting is a premier event in diabetes research and healthcare. As the EASD president, we would like to hear your insights on the most exciting insights of this year's annual meeting. Can you share with us? Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure, first of all, to be with my Chinese colleagues again. And to me, one of the highlights of this year's EASD in Vienna is the fact that more than 13,500 researchers and doctors from all over the world will be joining us in Vienna to really discuss about science and discuss also how we can improve the lives of those living with diabetes and find, hopefully, a prevention and a cure one day. The highlights of the conference, I can talk for half an hour, but there are some very interesting clinical trials reporting. For instance, I refer to the SURPASS-PEDS, which is a study on tirzepatide in children and young people with type 2 diabetes. And then, of course, the SURPASS-CVOT, which will be the big cardiovascular outcome trial comparing tirzepatide not to placebo, but to dulaglutide in people with type 2 diabetes. And for that, we created a special session. We called it an early bird session on Thursday morning. A similar early bird session was also created to present two trials in type 1 diabetes, namely disease-modifying therapies in people with new onset stage 3 clinical type 1 diabetes, one trial being the MELD-ATG trial. Then I will be presenting on anti-thymocyte globulin in children and young people with new diagnosis of type 1 diabetes clinically, and also the Vera T1D study, where the report will come on verapamil in people with new onset clinical type 1 diabetes. But other highlights, for instance, include the first report on a guideline of EASD, the first ever clinical guideline of EASD on diabetes distress. We will have the consensus on management of people with type 1 diabetes. And also a personal highlight will be the report on screening for early stage type 1 diabetes in the general population. And then, of course, we have our prize lectures, as well the established researchers as the rising stars. We will have more than 1,900 presentations actually at this conference in 4.5 days. So an amazing conference with really breaking news.
Thank you very much, Professor Mathieu, for your excellent sharing with the thorough information about EASD, which is really, really exciting. More than 1,900 lectures. So I think it will be really a feast for those healthcare professionals, right?
Absolutely. And those of you who cannot be here with us in Vienna, you will miss something and you should join next year because we're testing novel formats. We have spotlight stages where you can interact with the speaker. Now we also have an arena where the speaker will be in the middle and the audience will be around it. But then also we will have lab talks, because EASD wants to continue to focus on the whole span of diabetes research, ranging from, as I said, guidelines and consensus statements and breaking clinical trials, also to the very basic research. And so in these lab talks, leading basic scientists will share with the audience how their lab works, and they will invite them to peek through the keyhole and see and share with them best practices on laboratory work and research in diabetes.
Wow, that's really something very, very promising. So, Professor, since you have been working in the diabetes field for years, we wonder what direction do you believe have the most breakthrough potential in diabetes research and treatment in the upcoming years? And what role do you think EASD will play in promoting these breakthroughs?
To me, the big breakthrough is coming from what we call precision medicine, where we are better and better understanding the heterogeneity of diabetes, of all the types. And as I will be discussing in my presidential address, it is obvious that the old classification of type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, now type 5 diabetes, this is obsolete because we have more and more people with type 1 diabetes and obesity. We know that half of the people get type 1 diabetes when they're over 18. We know that people with type 2 diabetes have insulin resistance, but also beta cell failure. And they're not old people. They are diagnosed now in adolescence and even in childhood. And so this whole rainbow of diabetes that can occur in an individual is more and more important. And so to me, that is the future. Understanding through precision medicine what is happening in each individual so that we can come to personalized therapies. Because saying that, for instance, incretin-based therapies, GLP-1 receptor agonists, or the combinations now, that they are the treatments for type 2 diabetes, it will not be correct, because they will also have benefit in obese people with pancreatic forms of diabetes or with type 1 diabetes. And so it will be a new world when we understand better what happens in an individual and what therapy we need to use in this individual. So that to me is a big breakthrough. But also, I believe that in type 1 diabetes, we're now able to diagnose people in an early stage before the symptoms are present. And I believe we will be able to prevent type 1 diabetes. We have disease-modifying therapies coming towards us. And with the advent of the whole stem cell technology, think of the Chinese study with iPS cells, we are, I believe, going to see not only prevention of type 1 diabetes, but a cure of type 1 diabetes. And then finally, to me also, the advent of technology, artificial intelligence, helping us in diagnosing people with diabetes and in treating people with diabetes. So exciting years to come. And I hope that in the near future, we will indeed be able to stop some forms of diabetes.
Okay, great. Let's all hope that. So, Professor, we know, so you will deliver a keynote speech about where should screening take place and how do we effectively communicate the results. We wonder what key messages you want to convey to the audience. Can you share with us?
So, we will be presenting the consensus on screening for early stage type 1 diabetes at the EASD. And we give, first of all, the advice that when you've never screened for early stage type 1 diabetes before in your area or in your country, it's a good place to start with screening of family members of people with type 1 diabetes. Because there, the people know the disease, and also your chances of having people who are positive for 2 or more autoantibodies and thus have early stage is bigger. So if you've never screened before, start with the family members. But we also say that it is the time to start screening for early stage type 1 diabetes in the general population. And so we give advice on when the screening should happen, the cadence of screening, which autoantibodies you should look for. So it will be a very interesting session. And indeed, I will discuss specifically how to communicate on the results. Because this is a completely new world now. We will tell families of children that they have now a child with an early stage of type 1 diabetes when there's no symptoms present. And so communicating these results in a respectful way, but also allowing questions from the family on what it means. Also discussing with the family how the child will be followed up, because that is key. Educating the family and also monitoring the child. And there again, novel technology like CGM can play a role where CGM can also give us an idea when the child will move towards clinical type 1 diabetes.
Excellent. Exactly. So following what you just shared, Professor, like screening is so important, and effective communication of screening results is also very, very important. So you just mentioned about CGM, those high technologies. So we wonder, beyond clinical communication, what role do you think digital health technologies like artificial intelligence and as even policy making play in building a supportive ecosystem of high-risk individuals and their families? And how does EASD promote the transformation of these innovative screening and communication strategies? Can you share with us your insights?
Yes, so EASD is very aware of this evolving landscape. And so we put a lot of emphasis on education through our e-learning platform. So I invite all of you to go to easd.org and register for free and participate in modules, but also in piecemeal learning, as I call it, in the section of Horizons, where you have interviews on hot topics, for instance, screening for early stage type 1 diabetes, but also use of CGM, the advent of artificial intelligence in diabetes care, for instance. Now, EASD is the Society for the Study of Diabetes, but we have acknowledged several years ago, 6 years ago now, that if we want to change something, it's not only about research, it's not only about clinicians, it's also about policymakers. And so we started the European Diabetes Forum in Europe to work with the policymakers, with European Parliament, with the local, national and regional parliaments. And so this is crucial, because we will have to change the way we do medicine, the way our societies are organized, to allow these new technologies, artificial intelligence, to be used to support people with diabetes, but also research. And, to be honest, we are looking with big eyes at China, because when it comes to novel technologies, when it comes to apps, when it comes to AI, you are much more advanced than we are. And I envy you the vision of the politicians, because they saw the need. And so we're taking lessons from you there. But EASD for sure wants to stimulate this through research, and in Europe through our European Diabetes Forum.
Thank you. And another question. So in the beginning, you mentioned the key highlights of this EASD annual meeting, like new guidelines, the first new practical guidelines on distress. So we wonder, so what impact do you think this guideline will have on diabetes management in clinical practice? Can you briefly share with us?
Yes. So many years ago, a couple of years ago, we decided as EASD that we also, on top of the consensus reports that we make with sister organizations like the American Diabetes Association, that we would make our own clinical guidelines. And as always, EASD tries to be very democratic, and so we invited the membership to propose topics for guideline writing. And I was going to say strangely enough, but I should say interestingly enough, the top suggestion was to have a guideline on diabetes distress. And we discussed this and we said, yes, we will go for this because this is an important topic. How to detect, how to be aware as a clinician on diabetes distress in the individual living with diabetes, and also what to do about it, what to offer. And again, I invite you to attend the session and also read this guideline. It will be available, of course, in our flagship journal, Diabetologia, and also on EASD.org. The bottom line I can already share with you is we as clinicians should be aware about diabetes distress. We should also be aware that technology is important in people living with diabetes in supporting them, but can in itself also create distress, overload of data. Mm-hmm. And also we should offer in our teams psychological support and be aware of this distress. And that's the most important thing. Being aware that even in the year 2025, with all the new treatments, all the new technology, it is still a burden of a disease. Mm-hmm. And distress is there in many, many people.
Thank you, Professor Mathieu. Thank you very much for your informative and inspiring sharing. I would like to conclude our interview by showing really sincere appreciation for you personally and for the effort from EASD, for your trust and for your commitment. This is our first official collaboration between EASD and International Diabetes, 国际糖尿病 the first case in the EASD annual meeting. So as Professor Mathieu just mentioned, with the experts, they will have a dive in this feast, right? The annual meeting. You will have a lot of take-home messages. So I hope in the future we'll have more collaborations. Maybe in the last, I invite Professor Mathieu to share in one sentence or two sentences about the collaboration between EASD and China and medias like us.
China is one of the countries with the most attendees and also the most submitted abstracts. So keep on sending your abstracts, keep on presenting your research here in EASD. And again, it is because I've got to learn the collaboration over previous years in a more informal way that we took the decision to have now a formal collaboration with EASD and your organization. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye. 再见.